All right, Rob, we brought this up. We kind of broached it a bit earlier. We're talking about the MVP conversations. That is one of the hottest topics in the NFL right now. And it's interesting because the two front runners, Rob. So we talked about Dak Prescott. And Dak Prescott, Rob, this, you probably know this, but it is surprising that if Dak Prescott, Rob, were to win the MVP, he would be the first Dallas Cowboys quarterback ever to win the MVP. Does that surprise you?
No, because I guess I say no now because when you look at the numbers of like Roger Staubach and some of those guys, they weren't that great. But for that time, Staubach's numbers were good for that time.
Right,
but I'm just saying, and then I look at all the quarterbacks that they've had over the years, right? Danny White. I don't know who should have won who should have won an MVP.
No, you're right. When I first saw it, I was like, wait a minute. I had to double check it because I was like, no, I thought Staubach would have won one because Staubach was the best quarterback of the 70s, unless I'm missing somebody. He was a 6-time Pro Bowler. Obviously won, two Super Bowls, but he was a great quarterback. And generally, individually, he was regarded as better than Terry Bradshaw, but Bradshaw, of course, won the 4 Super Bowls. So then you go, the second best one in their history, Rob, would be Troy Aikman, but his numbers aren't spectacular. They were a mostly running team. And in fact, the only Cowboy to this date to win the MVP is Emmitt Smith. That's it. So you're right. If you think about it, outside of Staubach, there really is nobody
Danny
you would
White,
think. Right.
Like you
Romo, Danny White. I mean, it probably goes, if you take Dak out, it probably goes Staubach, Aikman, Romo, Danny White.
I mean, think about
Craig
that.
Morton for a minute.
Craig Morton, and who's the other quarterback who was with Bill Parcells, the brother? He didn't play there that long.
Oh, Quincy.
Yeah, I'm just saying.
Yeah,
but I'm trying to give you the degrees of quarterbacks. Right. That's what
I think Dak. I would he's ahead of Romo now, Rob. Would you agree with that? I would say it's Staubach, Aikman, Dak, and then Romo. They're top 4. I mean, obviously, if he wins the MVP, you probably got to put him ahead.
Yeah, I think it would be definite. It just depends on like how the season ends. You know what I mean? Like,
they go out in the first game, playoff game.
And you remember
him and Romo are pretty close.
Right, and the last 2 years, and I don't know what the scores are. You'd have to look them up. But the offense was awful in both of those games.
They haven't gotten blown out, but they've been bad. 19-12, I believe, might have been last year's score. But yeah, their offense has not disappeared. And the games have ended almost comically.
Right.
With the offense scrambling.
What happened? Didn't the running back line up?
Ezekiel Elliott was the center on last year, right? Remember that play? So we talked about Dak, but yeah, a little surprising he'd be only their second MVP ever in the first quarterback. But Rob, Brock Purdy, so Dak's an interesting MVP candidate. And Brock Purdy, Rob, obviously, I mean, Mr. Irrelevant. I'm going to go out on a limb and say he'd be the first Mr. Irrelevant to be the MVP. Although, I mean, being Mr. Irrelevant, Rob, is better than not being drafted at all, which is Kurt Warner.
I know the story that everybody keeps talking about, that Mr. Irrelevant, but I think Kurt Warner's story is even bigger. They wouldn't even draft. He wouldn't even draft him.
He was working in a supermarket.
He was bagging groceries.
Yeah.
Why isn't the Kurt Warner story? Like I get it.
That's bigger.
That's bigger. Chris, he wasn't even considered by anybody.
Yep.
He played arena football.
He played in Northern Iowa.
Yeah, I mean, come on, that guy. You want to talk about coming off the street?
Yeah,
Kurt Warner came off the street.
I agree with you on that one. But obviously, being Mr. Irrelevant and winning an MVP or being the second highest odds at this point is huge. So they're interesting. And as we talked about earlier, Christian McCaffrey is having a tremendous year. Right now, he's the best running back in the NFL. And he is, he's not high in the odds. He's in the top 10. But the question is, does he take away from Brock Purdy or vice versa? Will they cancel each other out? And Kyle Shanahan, the coach of the Niners, was asked about those two, having two NFL MVP candidates. Here's what he said.
That's the only reason I wouldn't overly comment on either one of them, because I don't want them to cancel each other out. But if any non-quarterback's going to get an MVP, I don't get how Christian McCaffrey can't. I mean, he's amazing in what he's done all year. If it's going to a quarterback, then I don't have to talk about Christian. I can talk about our quarterback. And I'm still, if his numbers is all you see, then I think that solves it up. But if you watch the film, then it makes it even stronger, which to me is the most important thing.
Yeah, Rob, look, and I think you'll probably talk about them potentially canceling each other out, which is a great chance of that happening. But I would say this. I think Christian McCaffrey on the field, I'm speaking on the field, he's helps Brock Purdy's MVP case because he's a great player, and that enables Purdy to do certain things. I don't know what Brock Purdy's numbers would be like without Christian McCaffrey. I can't say they wouldn't be great. But certainly having a running back like him helps you. But I got to say this too, Rob. Here's the thing. And obviously you hope, Rob, the voters take it as seriously as you and I do. You vote for Baseball Hall of Fame. I vote for NBA postseason awards, and take them seriously. And you do your research. And here's the thing about McCaffrey, that if voters really research it, it might lead to him not getting certain votes that might end up going to Purdy. Usually when for a non-quarterback to win the award, they have to do something pretty historic. All right, last non-quarterback to win it, of course, Adrian Peterson, 2012. So we're talking 11 years ago. But he ran for over 2,000 yards, right? That's historic. Christian McCaffrey, while he leads the league in rushing and is having a great year, he's only averaging 90 yards a game rushing. So he's not even averaging 100 yards. I mean, tons of guys have averaged 100 yards in a season, or certainly more than 90. And then he's not on pace to have like 1,000 yards receiving either. He's already well over 1,000 yards rushing. He's at 1,177, leads the league, but he's not on pace. He doesn't even have 500 yards receiving. So he's not going to hit the 1,000 thing. You remember Marshall Faulk. You mentioned Kurt Warner. Marshall Faulk that year rushed for over 1,300 yards, caught passes for over 1,000 yards, and that was tremendous. And but yet Kurt Warner still won the award. So that's the only thing I would say. I think McCaffrey's great. I think he's having a phenomenal season, but he's not doing anything that's historically going to rank high in the history books to make you say, like Tyreek Hill. I mean, if Tyreek gets 2,000, particularly in 16 games, then I think he's going to get some votes. So that's the one thing I would say why McCaffrey might not take away from Purdy.
See, I disagree. And their coach just put it out there by him even mentioning McCaffrey.
Well, he was asked, though, about both.
Right.
So,
but he could have just said, to when you mention those two, you're given validity. If you didn't want to get into that, you could say, I don't vote for the MVP. They're both having great seasons or whatever. But I think once you start talking about them, and then the people in San Francisco and the people who watch all the time, and the bump in the road with Brock Purdy in those 3 games, and I don't remember, was McCaffrey hurt a little bit in 1 or 2 of those games?
He was banged
right?
up, but he played.
Yeah, wasn't that great on those games. I'm just saying, right. And that's where he had the struggles. People can read into it all they want. And I just think it's not like it would be like a landslide of votes, Chris, but enough votes to come away from Brock Purdy. If you get a couple, to vote McCaffrey, could be the difference in it. And I really think that there will be some votes and still be some people who are skeptical of Brock Purdy, despite the numbers. If you just didn't put his name attached and look at the numbers, then you'd have different kind of voting. But I don't think voting goes that way.
There.
If you just
if he was a third round pick, he might be running away.
That's what I'm saying. Like if you don't have a name attached and you just hear the numbers, here the guys are up for MVP, and you don't know who's who, it'd be totally different. As soon as you say who's who, what games they played in, what kind of supporting cast they had, what was the schedule, you know what I mean? And you add those things in it, then I think it's different. I do think if Dak continues to play, I think he's going to win. I just think because there's going to be some votes taken away from Brock Purdy.
Yeah, and like you said, some people may hold it against him where he was drafted. And Dak is we talk about narrative sometimes, and obviously Purdy has a great narrative too. But, Dak being the first quarterback for the Cowboys ever, so he's got a lot of narrative with him too.
And then all the negative things for the years, and he finally got it together, and he beat Philly, and if they finish strong or something, like all those things could work in his favor. Now, if he stumbles down the stretch, Chris, then it's different. That's
what I think is interesting, right? Like, is one of these guys gonna stumble? You know what I mean? Like, just have a horrible game. Or
and you wouldn't have to have a lot of them. There are only 4 games left. If you have a bad day at the office and throw 3 picks and lose a game,
you're out.
You could be out. That's how close it is, and that's the other thing too.